every morning, Monday through Friday. It can be an hour to 4 hours, depending on where I'm at, with the pages that I'm working on. And do I have any special rituals or habits? I do. I play 3 games of solitaire, and that kind of gets my brain, away from everything else. But then right before that, I usually listen to a song on the internet, and then I start writing. And that's it. I write in the mornings, and there's a greyhound by my side. That's it.
The only thing that I think I do that could fall into this category would be my tendency to celebrate the completion of a draft, whether it's first draft, 10th draft, whatever, with an ice cold ginger ale soda, the kind with the little chunks of ginger in it.
What does your writing routine look like?
I set a timer on my phone for 7 minutes, and during that time I brainstorm as many ideas as I can. Next, I read over those ideas and I circle the best ones. Then I make really quick sketches, they're called thumbnail sketches, and I write the words to go with them. I show these to my family and my peers to get their input and feedback. If they laugh, then it's a success.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Stegman, author of Summer of Luck and Ready or Not. I am going to talk today about how I work on a new story. I have a lot of different notebooks. They're all different kinds, and these are used not for preparing to write a story, but I use these notebooks when I have finished a story and I'm making notes of things that I have to do. You can see there's all kinds of different notebooks, and they don't have any explanation as to what I mean, I use them for different things, but not storytelling. Storytelling to me is sacred, and I use a really special book to make notes when I'm thinking about writing a story. It's something that I find really pretty, and it's got lined pages so that I can, write all kinds of notes. And, oops, here's the lined pages. And this notebook goes back to a couple of different books that I've written. It has full pages of notes. It has quotes from other authors. It has notes like themes and stuff like that. There's really no, it has notes about resources that I can look at. There's no rhyme or reason to my preparation for writing a book, because sometimes I need to take some time and let the thoughts about what I want to write about come in and come to me. And my fourth book that I wrote, it's not published or even close to being published, but I knew the story I wanted to tell, but it was very vague at first. I didn't really have a clear idea, so I just kept reading and watching movies and TV shows that inspired me. I kept taking notes in my beautiful notebook, and then I opened a Word doc in the computer, and I started putting some notes into the computer. And every so often I had a thought, and all of a sudden I had a first line of my book, and it went from there. So a lot of authors have many, many different ways of preparing to write, and this is just an example of mine. So thank you for listening. Bye.
Usually a story is kind of ruminating in my mind. For instance, I'm writing a middle grade now, but I have my next story kind of playing around in my head. And then what I usually do is I'll write kind of free for all, no outlining. I'll just write and come up with wherever I think the story's going to go. And then after that, I might do a very loose outline, and then I'll write again a little bit free for all. And then eventually I start outlining and I start coming up with the pacing of the story. So it's a very organic process, and then it gets to the point where it's a very formal process.
If it's an action-packed story, I see the action and the events leading up to the action very clearly in my head. The more space combat or comic book fight scenes there are, the less I have to outline. But if the story is more of a mystery or something like that, the more thinking and outlining I have to do to get the character from point A to Z logically.
So I'm going to give you kind of a sneak peek into how my writing process works. So I am a nonfiction writer. I write primarily nonfiction. And I write mostly middle grade, which is like 8 to 12 years old. I have written YA, which is usually 12 years old and up. And I have 2 picture books that I've written coming out. So I guess my question is, how do you start, right? Well, it depends on what you're writing. So for me, of course, you have to start with the idea, right? And it has to be a good idea, because while it can be something that you like, you also have to think about your reader and be like, well, what will they want to learn? And is this interesting to them? And you try to make it as interesting to as broad amount of people as possible. And the second thing is, usually you try to have what we call a hook as authors, which means something that makes it unique or interesting. So for example, in my book, let's see, Save the Crash Test Dummies, which is, I have this here, right? So this book is about the history of car safety engineering. Now, if I told you you had to read a book about the history of car safety engineering, how many of you would say yes? I'm guessing there's not a lot of hands. Okay, that's fine. But what if I told you that this is sort of told through the eyes of a crash test dummy, right? And we kind of go through and learn about the history of cars, but also how it relates to crash test dummies and how we got all those safety features. All of a sudden, you might be more interested in. So that's what we call the hook. That's what grabs you and gets the reader to kind of come inside and want to read more. And so my process was when I'm sitting down and trying to figure out what to put in my book, I actually think like a reader, 8 to 12-year-old, and I'm like, if I were reading this book, what would I want to know? And I write down all of these things, and then that becomes my outline for what I'm going to do. And you have to put things in order because, of course, you have to explain things when you're writing nonfiction in the order that they come through. And so I'll write up an outline, and then I write what's called a proposal, which is what I send to my agent, and the agent sends out to editors. And I kind of come up with a little pitch, like, what is this book about? Well, this book is about the history of car safety engineering told sort of through the eyes of a crash test dummy. That's my pitch. And then I include my outline, and that's where I start. And then there's lots of revisions and all this kind of stuff, but that's how I get going with my ideas. And that's my writing process. How long does it take? It depends. Sometimes I write books and they're very fast. I have to do research, of course, and it sort of depends on how fast the research is. So I've written books as fast as 2 weeks. Usually I'm trying to hit a deadline. Also, I've taken 6 months to write a book, even 2 years to write a book. It just kind of depends on the book, on the topic, and also when your deadline is.